Hello everybody, welcome to the second of our lockdown lessons looking at the poetry of Christina Rossetti. Schools, while still closed, are about to close virtually for the Easter holidays. So the poem that we're about to learn today is Good Friday by Christina Rossetti. Right, so you'll need a copy of the poem Good Friday by Christina Rossetti, ideally an annotated one. I would normally ask one of you to read this, but I'm going to need to do it for you today. So here we go, Good Friday by Christina Rossetti. Am I a stone and not a sheep, that I can stand, O Christ, beneath thy cross, to number drop by drop thy blood's slow loss, and yet not weep? Not so those women loved, who with exceeding grief lamented thee. Not so fallen Peter, weeping bitterly. Not so the thief was moved. Not so the sun and moon, which hid their faces in a starless sky, a horror of great darkness at broad noon. I, only I. Yet give not o'er, but seek thy sheep, true shepherd of the flock, greater than Moses. Turn and look once more, and smite a rock. Okay, clearly from the title right the way through, we're dealing with a poem that's full of Christian imagery and theme. Good Friday is, as you will know, the Friday before Easter weekend. It's the Friday at the end of Holy Week, where Christians begin to remember the events that lead up to the crucifixion of Christ on Good Friday. Why is it called Good Friday, you ask? That's something you'll have to look up. Good Friday is a very important part of the Christian calendar, a very serious and somber day before the celebration of Easter Sunday. We've got a first-person speaker, similar to the speaker in Shut Out. It's not identified who this speaker is. It's not a gendered speaker. I'm going to use the pronoun she for this because you might be thinking this is clearly Rossetti's voice. It's not clear. Now, one of the ways in which that can be effective is if the speaker's identity is not made explicit, it allows us to identify with that speaker much more than were it to have been sort of locked into a particular identity. But you'll have your ideas about who this might be. The poem starts with stanza 1, which is one long rhetorical question, which is another technique which draws us in, which involves us. The speaker is asking, am I a stone and not a sheep, that I can stand here at the foot of Christ's cross, where he's being crucified and he's bleeding, and I can't weep? This seems to be a kind of exasperated tone. Why can't I? What's wrong with me that I can't feel like I should be feeling in this extraordinary place? Now, we know the image of stone, the metaphor of stone, as something that is without emotion. He was like a stone. Similarly, we know the metaphor of being a sheep, although for us, perhaps it's a much more negative image than Rossetti means it here. For Rossetti, the sheep is a very positive image because it's the sheep, as in Jesus is the shepherd of the sheep. He's the good shepherd. The followers of Jesus are his flock. She's saying, am I a stone and not a sheep? She wants to be a sheep, but she's a stone. Why a stone? Because she can't feel. That I'm standing here at the foot of the cross, that I can count. I'm so close, I can count the blood dropping, but I can't weep. So that rhetorical question draws us in. We're with her. We're with the speaker in stanza 1. We go on in stanza 2 to contrast that stone-like lack of emotion with the women who were at the foot of the cross with Christ. These women who loved, and their exceeding grief is mentioned in stanza 2, as they lamented thee. It's worth pointing out that these pronouns are all capitalized to emphasize Jesus's prominence and importance in this poem. These women with exceeding grief lamented thee. Who are the women? Well, you will have seen depictions of the crucifixion right through history, right through the history of art. We've had depictions of the crucifixion. It's such an important visual narrative for Christian faith. And there's normally, or often, at least one woman at the foot of the cross weeping. Now, various Gospels have got various women mentioned by name. Mary, the mother of Christ, Mary Magdalene, and one or two others are named as well. It's significant, I think, for Rossetti that these women are mentioned in her poem as having legitimate expression of faith. And I think that's important as well for Rossetti because it puts women front and centre of that crucifixion narrative. They're really important in the visual narrative. Whenever Christ's painted on the cross, they're an important part of it. And Rossetti has zoomed in on these women as a legitimate expression of faith and emotion, and as a vital and valid part of that narrative that she herself feels excluded from. So maybe that's something that we can use with our feminist lens when we're looking at this poem. And then we move to another character in the crucifixion story, in the story of Christ in the New Testament. There's the character of Peter, who was the first disciple and the first pope. And he's the one at the Last Supper that Christ tells Peter, "You will deny me 3 times." And Peter's like, no, I'd never deny you. I love you, Lord. And he says, "You will deny me 3 times." And of course, later on in the story, Peter's kind of cornered, and they say, "Weren't you with that guy that says he's the King of the Jews?" And Peter says, "No, I don't know." 3 times he does it. When he's confronted with that, he weeps bitterly. His heart breaks, and he realizes what he's done. That's the bitter tears in stanza 2. Fallen Peter, who sort of fell from grace at that point. And then in line 4, we mention of a thief. Now this, again, is a specific reference to one of the characters in that tableau of the crucifixion image. There are 3 crosses on the hill at Golgotha, and the guys either side of Christ are thieves that are being executed. One of them mocks Christ along with everybody else, but the other, and often depicted on the right side of Christ, believes that Jesus is who he says he is, and asks that a place be kept in paradise for him. And Jesus is often painted with his head inclining slightly to the right, suggesting that he's accepted this thief, and the thief is referred to in lots of stories as being the good thief, or the penitent thief, where penitent means repent, like he's someone who's sorry. He's the penitent thief, and he's on the right hand of Christ as they're crucified. And then we get kind of cosmological in stanza 3, because it's not only people that are able to express the outpouring of grief at the death of Christ. Even the heavens, nature itself is traumatized by what happens. And this is a direct reference to that moment at the crucifixion where the sky goes black, and the sun and moon hide their faces from what's happening. They can't bear to look. And the sky goes black, and the cloth at the temple was ripped, and all the Roman soldiers are traumatized by it as well. So this is so awful that the sun and moon hide their faces. There's not even any stars. It's a starless sky. There's no stars either. So nature is traumatized. The speaker alone is not. And that aloneness is emphasized by this short little line with the break at the end of line 3, and then only I, with the kind of catch in the throat of that caesura there. Only I can't feel what's going on here. And then a slight change in tone in stanza 4 as she directly speaks to Jesus. Yet give not o'er, which is like saying, don't give up, or don't look me over, don't look past me. Seek thy sheep. And again, this is the same sheep reference as we've got in stanza 1. This is not a negative. This is not a blind follower. This is a member of the flock. The shepherds and the sheep cropped up right through the imagery of Christianity, right from the Nativity, where the shepherds are the ones who they see the angels and come down, simple men living rough on the hillside looking after the sheep. Jesus often identifies himself as a shepherd, where his flock are the people. So sheep here is a really positive image. But seek thy sheep, she's saying to Jesus. This is Jesus in his role as shepherd. She calls him true shepherd of the flock. Greater than Moses. So Moses wasn't there at the crucifixion. This is an entirely different bit of the Bible. Moses is the Ten Commandments, leading the Jews out of on their exodus, their journey across the desert, where he leads them, the parting of the Red Sea. This is a different bit of the Bible altogether. This is Old Testament, and it refers to a specific moment in that exodus, with that movement of the people through the desert, and they're complaining and they're moaning at Moses. We're thirsty. We've got nothing to drink. Sort it out. Suffering, complain, and Moses turns to God and says, what can I do, what can I do? And God tells him to strike a rock with his staff, and miraculously water flows from that rock. And you can alternatively imagine this as quite a small rock with a focused fountain, or a great cataract of a flowing water, but it saves them, and they're able to drink. So when Rossetti says to Jesus, you're greater than Moses, turn and look once more, look for me again, and smite a rock. It's that rock from stanza 1. We've got the sheep from stanza 1, we've got the rock from stanza 1, which creates this nice circularity. Smite the rock. Who's the rock? I'm the rock, she's saying. The speaker's saying, I'm the rock. Smite me so that I can flow with what? Faith, emotion. I can weep. I can feel what I'm supposed to feel here. It finishes with that kind of beseeching, do this for me so that I can feel what I'm supposed to be feeling. And we can identify with that. We know the feeling of being excluded from a group emotion, even if this particular Christian imagery is not something that you follow. That the feeling of being ostracized from a group's emotion when you want badly to belong, we can identify with. And that's what's going on here. She's saying, smite the rock, let these feelings flow. So that's the premise of the poem. We've got two distinct Bible stories being referenced. We've got images of stones and sheep. We've got women being front and center of the crucifixion narrative. We've got Peter, that key disciple. We've got the thief, the sun and the moon, and all of them can express stuff that our speaker can't. So Good Friday by Christina Rossetti is written in 1862 and is released in a different book to Shut Out, in a different collection. It's a collection called Hymns and Verses from the Life of Christ. And there's a section in it where poems are organised by the feasts of the Christian calendar that they refer to. And so this one's firmly in the Easter part of that. Part of a body of work by Christina Rossetti that are known as devotional poems, where devotional here means a kind of an act of faith in the writing of it, an expression of faith in the substance of the poem, and also an aid to faith for those reading this type of poem. So this would have been an expression of her faith, but also something that would have been read by others as a confirmation, consolation, or comfort in their own faith. Let's look at the way that it's put together and how the structure of the poem reflects the premise and some of the feelings and tones that go through it. We've got, like Shut Out, a very regular series of quatrains, 4 in this case. And like Shut Out, we also appear to have a similar rhyme scheme. In the first 2 stanzas, we've got A, B, B, A, just as we did in Shut Out. And you'll remember from Shut Out that A, B, B, A rhyme scheme, which was popular not least by in the poetry of Tennyson in his poem In Memoriam, which was a few years before Christina wrote Shut Out. He uses A, B, B, A to create a sense of being locked in or stuck. A, B, B, A, if we use our imagination here, where the A goes to the B, it looks like we're going forwards and then we get stuck at the B and have to go back to the A again. This works for a feeling of someone whose emotions are blocked or is not able to flow with that emotion. It works. It's an effective rhyme scheme to communicate that. And then there's a change in stanza 3 where we go to an A-B rhyme scheme. And that's repeated in stanza 4. So there is a shift after stanza 2. And you might consider why that is. Do things start to get going after stanza 2? Is the block starting to shift? Is it moving towards the expression of why me, and then please, O Lord, do something about it, with the beseeching of Jesus to not to look her over or not to look past her. We've got some caesura doing their thing as we had in Shutout, fewer, but they're here. Am I a stone and not a sheep, that I can stand, O Christ, beneath thy cross? You can hear the pain in that caesura, that exclamation of O Christ. She's fighting, and the caesura block the flow and create the tension in line 2, and then the tension disappears in line 3. No caesura, to number drop by drop thy blood slow lost. It flows, maybe the blood is flowing as the rhythm does. The emphasis of slow, drop by drop and slow, to remind us of what a painful and an awful thing it is that she's witnessing, that she can't feel any emotion for. And yet not weep. There's the rhetorical question. Not so those women loved, who with exceeding grief lamented thee. Not so fallen Peter, weeping bitterly. Not so the thief was moved. You'll notice that line 2 and 3 is longer than line 1 and 4 in all the stanzas. You'll also have heard that familiar tum-ti-tum-ti-tum-ti-tum, the iambic rhythm. But we can't use one iambic meter to describe the whole poem because it changes. We've got a shorter line 1 and 4, and longer lines 2 and 3 in each of the stanzas. Now those shorter lines throw emphasis particularly on the 4th line, where Rossetti is wanting her point to be made clearly. She's particularly in stanza 3, she wants that the end of line 4 to really stand out, so she shortens it so it has that more space. The rhetorical question has its own space in stanza 1, the I only I particularly in stanza 3. Lines 2 and 3 then are longer and more descriptive. We get much more detail in line 2 and 3, and those are regular, line 2 and 3. They're regular, they're pentameter. Let's just check that. But seek thy sheep, true shepherd of the flock. They're pentameter, 10 beats, 5 lots of iambs. And line 1 and 4 varies. We've got tetrameter in line 1, and then it gets very, very short, for example, in stanza 3 with line 4. So the rhythm chops and changes, except for those 2 central lines where she really wants to vividly describe what she's seeing, so that we can imagine how she feels at not feeling emotion at what she's seen. It wouldn't work if we weren't able to visualize it clearly. So I think that the structure works very well. The rigidity of the quatrains, the locked-inness of those quatrains, emphasised by the ABBA of stanza 1 and 2. And then there's a shift in stanza 3 and 4. So I'd like you to think about what's your take on that rhythmic shift at the end of stanza 2? Why does she move to a rhyme scheme with arguably a bit more momentum to it? You might have spotted 1 or 2 of these words that don't appear to rhyme. We've got a word that loved and moved, which don't really rhyme. They're not perfect rhymes. This is rhyming more on the consonant than the vowel. So this is consonant rhyme rather than an assonant rhyme. But the rhyme scheme stands up. I think looking at stanza 4, we've got caesura happening again in the middle of those long lines where she's describing seek thy sheep, the shepherds of the flock, great and most turn, look once more. There's those long lines with the caesura. There's a broken step. She's exhausted like the followers of Moses in the desert, and she's exhausted with her own pain at the lack of feeling that she has before she begs Jesus to smite her and let those emotions run. Okay, so the second of 2 devotional poems by Christina Rossetti. As I've said before, you'll need to have your reading and your own contextual links with Rossetti's life, both her personal life, her faith, and the wider context in which she's writing. Hopefully that's clear and you've got lots of ideas. If you do have ideas that I haven't discussed and you want to share them, please do use the comments below. Similarly, if you've got questions or if something's not clear, use the comments below. Or if you're part of my A-level English class, then you have the other methods to communicate with me. Please do. We're going to put a piece of work together using this poem, Good Friday, and the poem we did last, Shutout, because there are obvious parallels, and that will be the focus of our next piece of extended writing. So I hope that makes sense. I'll see you soon. Take care. All the best. Thanks for watching.